Hello and welcome to this meeting of the Town Council of Oakville. It's January 31st, and I invite you to join council in O Canada. Thank you, everybody. 202 years ago, Indigenous people here began welcoming settlers from all over the British Empire. Soon, they were helping slaves escaping from the United States to settle here too. Today, our Indigenous founding partners are still here enjoying this land with us. They fish and camp under their Treaty 22 rights. Indigenous people in their thousands also live with us as neighbors and friends. Our Indigenous white and Black settlers created a community with an attractive degree of harmony and prosperity. And in 1857, Ontario gave official recognition of Oakville as a town. At Town Hall 165 years later, we fly the flag of the Mississaugas of the Credit beside the flags of Oakville, Ontario, and Canada. We fly these flags together to acknowledge our origins. People from all over the world are attracted to the livability we have created. We offer newcomers a warm spirit of welcome. We offer everyone our founding story so everyone knows what we are part of. We feel sorrow and distress for acts of racism and intolerance suffered across Canada and here at home. We want our future to be equitable and inclusive for all. The path of truth and reconciliation can unite us all. Please keep well, stay safe, and let me or your council member know of any chance to be helpful to you and yours. And please let us know anytime you can help increase Oakville's harmony, prosperity, and livability. Council, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Councillor Knoll?
Thank you. Good evening, Your Worship. I'd like to declare a pecuniary interest in 7.1 sub 3. That's the budget for the Kerr Village Business Improvement Area. As per my standing pecuniary interest in this matter, I am the CEO and shareholder of a corporation that is a member of the Kerr Street BIA, and as such, I would absent myself from the vote.
Thank you very much. We'll call that separately. Madam Clerk, I see no other declarations of pecuniary interest. Council, would two of you like to move and second the confirmation of the minutes of the previous council meetings as listed in the agendas? Councillor Lischenna and Councillor Palmer, thank you. Are there any objections or corrections? Madam Clerk, there being none, the minutes are adopted. It would now be in order to resolve into committee of the whole, if we could have a mover and seconder for that. Councillor Longo and Councillor Giddings, thank you. Any objection? Madam Clerk, there being no objection, that carries. And we're now resolved into committee of the whole. And in this more relaxed setting, we don't need a seconder for our motions. Speaking of motions, Council, I'd like to call your attention to the consent items, 7.1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And I would ask for a motion for the consent items. Councillor Adams, thank you for that.
And I'd include the memo from staff on item 7.6.
Yes, would you like to speak to that or just read it out for everybody's benefit?
I actually don't have it immediately in front of me,
I do.
but it, as I understand it, it just fixes I'll describe it as a typo where it talked about expenses including faxes instead of telephones.
Okay,
And so, since most of us are using telephones, not faxes, I think that's why it is there.
all right, buddy. Well, everybody appreciates your eagle eye on that. Councillor Haslett-Thiel?
Mayor Burton, I'd be pleased to support the motion. I just wanted to comment on 7.1. Would now be an appropriate time?
Well, it's not a consent item anymore, I guess, but sure, you can comment on it. Go ahead.
Well, I think it's important that as we approve the BIA budgets, that we acknowledge the hard work of the BIA organizations across Oakville. I know that my council colleagues that sit on Kerr and Bronte are proud of their association, and I'm certainly proud of downtown. And as I know you are, Mayor Burton, they did a tremendous amount of heavy lifting over the last year, and I think the budgets they put forward show that they are keenly interested in keeping our small business is thriving or surviving, depending on the day and the week. And I just wanted to acknowledge that their efforts really do make a difference.
Well, thank you, Councillor. I'm sure we all feel that way. Councillor Sandhu?
Mayor Burton, I was just, sorry, just a question of order. Do we need to separate any of the consent items due to the pecuniary interest mentioned?
What I'm going to do is I'm going to deal
leave
with
it to you.
that.
I'll leave it
Thank
to
you for
you.
your help.
Yeah.
All right. All right, I have a motion for the consent items from Councillor Adams that's in order. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to call for, if there are any objections from anyone for any of them, Councillor Knoll being understood to be absenting himself from the item on which he declared a conflict, item 7.1.3. So is there any objection to the motion except for 7.1.3? Madam Clerk, I see none, and so those are carried. And is there any objection, Councillor Knoll now absenting himself from this discussion, from 7.1.3? And there being no objection, that too is adopted. And the minutes will show that Councillor Knoll, having declared his conflict, did not participate. So thank you, everybody, for getting us through that. Now, we have 5 discussion items, and the first is the notice of motion on Quebec's Bill 21, an act respecting the laicity of the state. This motion was introduced on December 20th, moved by me and seconded by Councillor Robertson. We have delegations tonight, and I just would like to explain before we call the delegations that the construction of the resolution, I'll just call your attention, Council and the public, to the second last paragraph in the resolution. And this is that the town of Oakville Council provide a contribution of an amount to be decided by Council to the joint legal challenge of Bill 21, etc. And as I imagine this going, this leaves Council free to vote for this motion should they wish to express their concern about Bill 21. And then, if this passes, I believe Councillor Palmer may move a motion calling on Council to make a donation of an amount. And that will give councillors who do not wish to support a donation a chance to decide whether Council makes a donation. In other words, if her motion were to fail, Council would have decided not to make, or to make a donation of 0, if you will. Are you all content with that approach? I see no objection, and so, Madam Clerk, I just want to set this stage off with a brief remark, and then we'll call the delegations. And perhaps after I make my remark, Councillor Robertson may wish to as well. But I just wanted to, say a couple of things. We sent a message against Bill 21 when it was adopted a couple of years ago. And now Bill 21 has been used against a school teacher in Chelsea, Quebec. Our motion tonight renews our opposition to this attack on our rights under the rights and freedoms under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And I've explained how this motion works in two parts. And I just want to say that if the motion for a donation were to fail, I will, in any event, be making a personal donation. And if it were to pass, I'll match it personally. And with that, I'll turn to Councillor Robertson.
Today I watched the TV Ontario episode with Steve Paikin interviewing three people, one from Maclean's and one a retired senator and one a resident from Chelsea where the teacher has been reassigned. And in watching that segment that discussed why this came up finally 2 years later, it was almost like they didn't realize that they hadn't hired anybody. For 2 years, they hadn't hired anybody that walked in a hijab in any of their public sectors. And one of the comments was, perhaps we should not be a part of this and let Quebec figure this out on their own, because it seems to be swaying a little bit more toward them doing that. And the one resident said, what happens if it takes 5 years? You're going to say that no one in a hijab or no one in a turban or no one with religious symbols for 5-7 years will get hired until they decide to change it themselves. So I think that it's so important that as a municipality, we can't sit there and talk about exclusion and diversity and sit there and say, well, if you're a municipality in Quebec, we don't care. You're not going to. That's not okay. So this motion means a great deal to me. And like the mayor, funding a court challenge is expensive. So you only get to walk the talk if you do something like this. And so I would like to first speak to the motion, and then hopefully with Councillor Parmar, we will make it go one step further. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sandhu? You've disappeared entirely. Oh, there you are. But you're muted. That's why we can't hear you.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I was just saying that this bill specifically, especially during the time where we initially heard about it from Quebec, hits entirely close to home for me, a little bit too close for comfort. As all of you know on council, my husband is a turban Sikh. My father's a turban Sikh. My father-in-law is a turban Sikh. And they wear those articles of faith with pride. And to see something like this, where Councillor Robertson just mentioned that this hiring has not happened, none of them would have been able to get a job. And I find that hurtful. I think that's the best word. So again, just as Councillor Robertson mentioned, I will absolutely be supporting this motion, and then deferring to Councillor Parmar for the next.
All right, thank you, Council. Madam Clerk, would you like to call the delegations? And then we'll debate the motion or motions after that.
Yes, the first delegation I don't believe has signed on to the meeting. So our first delegation tonight is Dr. Elia Khan.
Welcome, Dr. Khan. Council looks forward to your information.
Can you hear me and see me now?
Yes, we can. Quite well,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, excellent. So thank you so much, Mayor Burton, and for the town councillors for the opportunity to speak to you today about Bill 21. I'm just going to advance my slides. Here we go. So I wanted to say that this bill prohibits the display of religious symbols by public sector workers. And this ban on religious symbols is vague and impossible to apply consistently. And it violates the basic requirements of the rule of law. And the United Nations rapporteurs have actually sent a letter of concern to Quebec's National Assembly via the Canadian Mission in Geneva, maintaining that Bill 21 threatens freedoms protected by the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. And as you've mentioned, Mayor Burton, it was in December of 2021 that a teacher was removed from the classroom for wearing hijab. And this bill denies women the right to choose how to dress. It is inappropriate in a civilized and democratic free society. It is anti-woman, it is misogynistic, and it is racist. Bill 21 tells Muslim women that they are unwelcome and they don't belong and they should be out of sight. It attacks and undermines the Muslim women who are contributing to Canada. It attacks and undermines Muslim women who are professors and educators in Canada. And it's an embarrassment and a disgrace to a democratic nation, which should be a leader for women's rights and not bar women from public just because of how they choose to dress. As a hijab woman, a hijab wearing Muslim woman, I would have been prevented from serving my country as a professor of medicine. I developed the calcium program at McMaster University and the training program in metabolic bone disease. I have brought millions of dollars of research funding to Canada. I brought international recognition to Canada for being a leader in calcium and metabolic bone disease. And I've been blessed to have received numerous national and international awards for contributions to research and education. And I was recognized as being in the top 0.1% of the world experts in parathyroid disease by Expert Escape. But I would have been disallowed to be a professor if this bill applied to Ontario. I was the only hijab-wearing woman who received the Queen's Diamond Jubilee Medal as a leader in the areas of endocrinology, calcium disorders, and metabolic bone disease. We are part of the landscape. We need to welcome everybody. That's what Canada stands for. I was awarded the Lindy Fraser Award from Osteoporosis Canada for outstanding contributions to research and education, and recognized internationally as well for research and education. These were some of the awards that I've received. And the reason why I share this information is to remind us that I'm not just one person. There are hundreds of thousands of women like myself who are leading in different areas of expertise across Canada, coast to coast. I have been involved in training medical students and doctors in Canada and globally, and I trained medical specialists who are now treating patients in Quebec using the guidelines and therapies which I developed. And so the people who are trying to bar Muslim women from public society will find themselves trained, will find themselves treated by doctors trained by a Muslim woman in hijab at McMaster University. The professor who's developed the metabolic bone program in Quebec at the University of Sherbrooke just completed her training program with myself at McMaster. So we have contributed to Canada and its advances, and we have benefited from Canada, and we want to be able to return back what we have received from Canada. I treat patients every year proudly wearing my hijab, and this bill would prevent Muslim women from contributing and making Canada the best that it can be. So this bill undermines scientific and medical advancement. It undermines patient care. I proudly wear hijab as a Muslim woman as an expression of my faith. My faith inspires me to pursue education and innovative approaches to research and care in order to alleviate pain and suffering. And Muslim women have a long history of being educators and scientists. Just want to remind everybody that the oldest university in the world was actually founded by a Muslim woman in hijab, Fatima al-Fihri. She built this university, Al-Qarawiyyin, in Morocco in 857, which is the first university and the oldest university in the world. So it is important for us to tell the Quebec government that through this bill, they are saying that Muslim women have no place in society. And we have witnessed the horrific outcomes of hatred. We've seen the massacres and the killings that have resulted from this type of hatred and alienation, which this bill is also endorsing. And so I say that we should stand in solidarity with other women of faith, and we need to reject Bill 21 and say no to racism, Islamophobia, and misogyny. And we need to stand united against Bill 21 and stand united for women's rights and a democratic and free Canada, which is a leader amongst the others. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Khan, for your information. Are there questions? Thank you, Dr. Khan. Madam Clerk, do you have another delegation?
Yes, we have another two delegations together, Gurpartap Singh Tour and Amanpreet Singh Grewal, representing the World Sikh Organization of Canada.
Council welcomes you, and as soon as we have the technology linking us, we look forward to your information.
Hi there, good evening, everyone. I'm here this evening in my capacity as Ontario Regional Board Member for the World Sikh Organization of Canada. The WSO is a national organization. It's 37 years old, and it has a mandate to promote and protect the interests of Sikhs in Canada and advocate for the protection of human rights for all. We have been to the Supreme Court of Canada on numerous occasions, fighting and protecting for the rights of Sikhs and other faiths to freely practice their religion. Our board reflects the diversity of the Canadian Sikh community, having strong representation across all regions. The WSO Executive Board is over 2/3 women, and 90% of our board is under the age of 40. I raise this demographic breakdown because over the last few years, our organization has been overwhelmed with the number of young people and individuals from all walks of life reaching out and wanting to become involved in our advocacy efforts because there is something happening in Canada and across the world that feels very unsettling. The WSO has spent almost the last decade fighting the growing sentiment of intolerance towards faith-based communities in Quebec. This all came to a head with the passing of Bill 21. When our community first heard of this bill, our parents and our grandparents started to recall the trauma of what they faced when they first arrived in Canada. How many of our fathers and brothers were told to cut their hair and remove their turbans to gain employment? How can we possibly turn the clock back now? And if anyone still believes this is an exaggeration, our very own WSO board member from Quebec, Amrit Kaur, is a turban-wearing woman who recently trained as a teacher. Over the last few years, we watched her complete her studies while fighting against Bill 21 to inevitably have to leave her family and friends in Montreal to move to BC so she can follow her passion to be an educator and still be true to her Sikh identity. Choosing between faith and employment are not choices we should ever have to make, but our parents made them in the 70s and the 80s, and we are being forced to make them again today during 2022. I bring forward the lived experience of my community, but we have not been alone in this fight. We are joined by our Muslim, Jewish, Christian, interfaith, and non-faith brothers and sisters. We feel the pain and fear of what this bill is doing to our society. We are already seeing the rates of hate crimes increasing in Quebec. We fear what this will mean for the rest of Canada. But my personal fear is this: Bill 21 presents terrifying constructs that are not being challenged by our leaders by our institutions, by our neighbors, or by our friends. This normalizes a sense of distrust for people who look different. This normalization then leads to the validation of intolerance, and from this, we will only see the proliferation of hate. We are already seeing it. The question is, when will we stand united as Canadians to stop it? As you have heard, several community organizations such as the WSO, NCCM, CCLA, and other community groups are spearheading the legal challenge without the support of the government. The case is currently before the Quebec Court of Appeal. The decision of the Quebec Superior Court found that the law violates the basic rights of religious minorities, but those violations are permissible because of the Charter's notwithstanding clause. The situation in Quebec is deeply troubling as it highlights that fundamental human rights and freedoms in Canada can be severely infringed upon by governments using the notwithstanding clause. This pattern could be repeated anywhere else in Canada if the law is not struck down. But the fight does not start and stop with organizations like ours. With public servants and moms personally affected, the fight against Bill 21 needs everyone in this chamber and all similar chambers across Canada to reflect on how they want to be remembered in history at this time. Some have questioned the relevance or impact of municipalities weighing into this fight, and to those people, I ask them to contemplate what these motions and actions truly represent. This is our opportunity as Canadians to firmly take a position against laws that create a space for intolerance. Your residents, who once again feel marginalized and betrayed, need to see their respective leaders stand shoulder to shoulder with us against the sentiments that are driving these laws and the broader impacts on society. Bringing forward this action will also keep this conversation relevant because, again, this issue has not yet experienced the level of outrage and response we should have demanded as Canadians. And lastly, these motions will put on record that you as community leaders, as our council, will not tolerate intolerance. I will leave you with these words from Benjamin Franklin. Justice will not be served until those who are unaffected are as outraged as those who are. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much for your remarks, and I found them very inspirational. Councillor O'Meara, did you have a question for the delegate?
I do, and thank you so much, Mr. Gruel, for speaking here, and I agree with every single word you said here tonight. I guess my question and a question that a lot of municipalities have had about this issue really speaks to, what is the result that we want to get here? If the result is for Quebec to turn this ban, we've been told from numerous Francophone individuals who fundamentally disagree with the Bill 21, they fundamentally are fighting against it. They've told municipalities, do not do this. Do not jump into the fight here because you're entrenching the us versus them, Francophones versus the rest of Canada. What would you say, to municipalities like us who are not in Quebec, we're not in the province, we don't understand that, but we fundamentally agree with the audacity of Bill 21 and the ridiculous of it, but we want to see the same outcome that you do. And I guess, what would you advise us if the people inside the fight are saying stay out of the fight? Are you asking us to get into the fight in spite of what they're telling us, I guess is my question.
Thank you, Councillor, for your question. In response to that, I feel that if we were to stop now and if we were not able to get as much support as we can to fight Bill 21, what's stopping another jurisdiction to introducing such a bill, which can impact minorities across Canada?
Okay, thank you very much for the question and the answer. I hope everyone finds it helpful. Madam Clerk, do you have any other? All right, Council, that's the end of our delegations. Mr. Gruel, thank you very much for being here. And I'll confine the question to table. Discussion, debate, Councillor Dudek.
Thank you, Your Worship. I fully agree and support the motion as we have in the past. The comments that have been received thus far, I echo them wholeheartedly. And without hesitation, I would offer my support in terms of standing behind them with this initiative. I will deal with the other once Councillor Palmer brings her motion along to add to this, but at this point, the motion thus far, absolutely 100%.
Thank you, Councillor Dudek. Councillor Palmer and then Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Mayor Burden and Councillor Robertson for bringing this motion forward. And thank you to the delegates for their very important and impactful remarks. This bill has negatively impacted thousands of Canadian families, forcing relocation, as we just heard, forcing a change in career and causing poor mental health. Bill 21 is a discriminatory law, and we cannot allow religious freedom to be infringed in Quebec. If we accept that, we are setting a dangerous precedent. We are putting our own communities at risk. Bill 21 validates and normalizes hate, specifically racism and Islamophobia. And as a result, we are seeing increased rates of hate incidents across the country. All levels of government need to speak up, and we need to work together to defend our human rights. And for that reason, I support this motion. This council made a pledge towards diversity, equity, and inclusion, and this evening is our opportunity to show that commitment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Palmer. Councillor Longo and then Councillor Elgar.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think I've mentioned in the past when this first came to council about Bill 21 that I actually grew up in Quebec, and being an Anglophone in Quebec, having firsthand discrimination against being an Anglophone, you know, and I'd say the majority of people were not actually. I have amazing friends to this day who are Francophone, but to have Bill 21 be such a discriminatory bill, we can't be on the sidelines on this. We have to be front and center on this because it's the wrong thing and it's discriminatory. Having lived the type of discrimination there, I think the majority of Quebecers do not feel this way, and it should not be there. And I think we need to stand behind the people of Quebec, because it doesn't matter your race, religion, you're still a Quebecer and you're still a Canadian, and you should be protected. And so I fully support our motion related to Bill 21. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Longo. Councillor Elgar and then Councillor O'Meara and Adams.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mayor Burton. I'd like to request a recorded vote on part 1 of the motion we have before us, which excludes the funding at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Elgar. Councillor Longo and Councillor Elgar, your hands are only confusing me momentarily. I remember that we're going to Councillor O'Meara and then Councillor Adams next. Thank you, everybody.
Sorry, Your Worship, is that me right now? Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I cannot express enough the emotional commitment I have to this motion, to the one that Councillor Palmer brought forward a few weeks ago, to the thoughts in my heart that just say this is so wrong. Having said that, I have read and looked at and actually spoken to some of the leaders in Quebec, from Mayor Plante in Quebec to Andre Pratt, the former senator, to Gabrielle Nadeau-Dubois, former who's the co-speaker of the Quebec Solidaire. They have asked specifically municipalities, do not do this. What you're actually doing is entrenching the other side. You're making it harder for us to dig out, because what it turns out to be is the rest of Canada versus the Quebecois. And for those of us who understand the French and the Quebecois, and we understand a lot of the battles they've had in the past, and Councillor Longo knows this probably more than any of us. It's a difficult situation because none of us lived there and lived in that experience. And they are saying, do not do this, municipalities, because you're making it harder for us to talk to our residents and our neighbors and our colleagues and saying that what we're doing is the wrong thing. They make it a different thing. Now, does that mean that I do not think that this is a horrible bill proposed by xenophobic intentions? Absolutely. But it doesn't mean that it's every municipality's job to overparent and say, we know better than you. And we're being told you don't know better than us. We're saying, let us do this job and let us battle it out. And what the federal government has said is, if this fails, we will deal with it then. I don't absolve them. I think the federal government should have gotten in right from day one. But the federal government has said, let Quebec fight it out now. And depending on where it goes, then we will bring the full resources of the federal government in. Okay, that's fine. My worry is on a number of fronts. One that I've said. The second is that, do we need to now have an international justice reserve? Because there are many Indigenous groups having legal battles all throughout Canada. And why aren't we fighting with them? Why aren't we putting money in with them? There are minority groups, Israeli groups, anti-Semitism groups who have numerous battles all across Canada in this court. Why aren't we jumping in there? I am behind this movement 100%, but I'm saying as a tax levy in Oakville, where we, again, get 2 cents of every dollar that the municipal, the federal and provincial and all taxpayers pay, this is not where we are supposed to put our money towards. If we want to really make a saying and we want to make something, why don't we make our parks and recs more ethnically friendly? Why don't we start working and putting this money into groups and letting them know they're more welcome here? Why don't we have more cricket pitches, more other pitches, more other groups and use our money into a bailiwick that we actually have the authority to do? That is where I say we should direct this money to. It's not to say at all that I disagree. And I'll be the first person on Queen's Park marching if this ever came anywhere past our borders. But I'm just saying we have a legal responsibility to defend what we are legally responsible to defend and to advocate for what we're not. And we do a great job on advocating that. And I think we should continue doing that. But my heart is with all of the people in Quebec who are going through this, and my heart and my vision are with this. But in terms of legally putting money towards this, I can't support the motion as it stands. So thank you very much, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Adams, then Councillor Hazateel and Councillor Sandhu.
Your Worship, on a point of order, could you explain to me what we're voting on? I was under the impression we were only dealing with the motion, yet Councillor O'Meara spoke to something that has not been proposed as yet.
Councillor, we're only voting on the motion. A motion to make a donation is after, but Councillor O'Meara also spoke to other issues besides donation, including taking a stand, as I understood him. And so I regret any confusion that caused, but I thought, and I still think, that his remarks were in order. And I believe all of us know that we're doing this in 2 steps. Is that satisfactory? Is that good enough? Okay, glad you're happy. Councillor Adams, you still have the floor.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Your Worship. And just to be clear, as I understand it, the first part that we're voting on are parts 1, 2, and 4 of the motion, the therefore be it resolved piece.
No, Councillor, as I have explained several times, we're voting, I was intending that we would vote on the entire motion. The entire motion sets up an opportunity for a motion to set a donation. And if that donation motion fails, then council will have decided, per this motion, to make a contribution of 0. So it all hangs
Okay.
together perfectly logically.
Okay, so we're doing the entire motion, including the component that reads that the town of Oakville Council provide a contribution of an amount to be decided. That's correct?
Yes, exactly. And
Thank
the
you.
amount
Thank
to
you.
be
Just-
decided could turn out to be 0. I
And-
thought this
and
was
so we're
airtight
gonna deal with
logically
this piece.
when we set this up for you.
I'm just trying to help everybody here and who might be watching at home understand what we're doing.
I'm
'Cause
grateful
clearly
for
there's some
your
confusion.
assistance. Would you like to speak to any part of the motion?
I will speak very briefly, only to say that I completely support the motion, as I did when we dealt with Bill 21 way back in 2020. I think this bill is wrong. It inflames issues that shouldn't be inflamed, and it is, while it is in Quebec, I think it is a bad signal to the rest of Canada. And it's a bad signal to our residents here in Oakville. And so for that reason, I completely support the motion, and I condemn the Bill 21 as it stands.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hazlitt-Deal, then I had Councillor Sandu, and I now have Councillor Knoll instead. Councillor Hazlitt-Deal.
Thank you, Mayor Burton. So I have comments in regards to the motion as it's written, and I'm wondering about an amendment to the motion as it's tabled. So you're the procedural expert. I am concerned about the way the paragraph is phrased, because when it says provide a contribution of an amount to be decided by council to the joint legal challenge of Bill 21, it then states the very reputable organizations, and it states, and encourage other municipalities and levels of government to contribute to the legal challenge against Bill 21. Can we not separate that part out to be part of the second motion? So it's clear we're condemning, as we all will, this abhorrent law, and then discuss a motion around specifically what that legal contribution, not just the amount, but whether we are in fact telling other municipalities to join this legal challenge. I really do see them as it important that you separate that part out. It's your motion. I'm asking if you would agree to an amendment to do that.
So no amendment is required to do that. At the request of any member of the council, an item can be broken into any pieces that member requests. And I'm hearing you wanting to separate the contribution part and the, let me call it, encouragement part. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is just that one paragraph that I think is better suited to be in the second motion, which we understand will be tabled around funding. And
a second motion would be out of order without the clause that the town of Oakville Council provide a contribution of an amount to be decided by council. And you can break that out and defeat it if you want, but then there will be no motion in order to even debate a contribution. So those who wish to kill any thought of a donation or discussion, that would be your best line of attack, is to separate that and defeat it.
So respectfully, I don't think anybody here wants to kill anything. And in fact, I think our hearts are quite broken over this. I've had the Charter of Rights and Freedom in my office posted for more than 15 years. And that charter was posted specifically because the people I worked with as a human resources professional, I wanted them to know that it isn't just in a book somewhere, that it lives and breathes in what I do every day and what they do every day as business professionals or individuals. So I don't think anybody wants to kill something, but I do think there is a nuance to this that I will speak to then.
You asked me for procedural advice. I've given you what I believe to be careful and objective procedural advice. And that advice continues to be that if you remove the clause that says an amount to be decided by council, it will be out of order to have a motion to make a donation.
But
And
we would,
if a person wants to remove that clause, a person, and if a majority wishes to remove that clause, the question of a donation will be dead for tonight anyway.
okay. All right. So what I would speak to about this then is that there is a significant part about what Councillor O'Meara has spoken to, which I think is incredibly important to weigh. I have an immense amount of respect for the Canadian Civil Liberties Association. They are an association that is not government funded. They work largely with pro bono and public service donations. They are a tremendous organization, as my research showed, is the National Council of Muslims and the World Sikh Organization. All of these organizations are at the forefront of these legal battle. We are not a party to this litigation in the terms of legalities. We are a party to it in the sense that our emotions and our commitment to the charter and our commitment to diversity and multiculturalism, that's what we are party to. It's when we join hands and say, this is not right. And as someone said very well, we cannot normalize this kind of behavior, and nor do we ever accept it in Quebec or anywhere in Canada, or should we? The way things are worded, I will have to obviously ponder before my hand goes up, but I do want to be very clear. It is abhorrent, and I think all of us agree with that. And I want to express to the individuals who truly suffer at the hand of people who have no conscience. You know, a teacher cannot go into a classroom and do what she loves to do and do it well. A lawyer may not be able to do the law. It is fundamentally wrong. It is, though, in the federal jurisdiction, and it is in the provincial jurisdiction to change this. And we've seen examples in this country already that the notwithstanding clause has been misused. It is not in the spirit and intent of what most of us thought the charter stood for. So I abhor Bill 21. I am prepared to continue to say that. I also think it's important to remember who is fighting this battle and the legal organizations that are doing the work. And we are not the legal organization, nor are we giving them legal advice, nor should we be potentially trying to be a part of that. So I do appreciate the delegates tonight. I thought that they were very thoughtful, and they make our country a better place by what they shared.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Knoll, and then Councillor Duddick.
Thank you, Worship. First of all, I want to thank you and Councillor Robertson for bringing this motion forward. I think it's an important discussion to have. And I do appreciate the time and effort that's gone into both crafting it as well as maneuvering it through the process. I'm speaking to the motion itself, to the operative portions of the motion. I don't want to get mixed up in the money portion at this point, because I think the most important aspect of this is our condemnation of this abhorrent law. And with great respect to my friend, Councillor O'Meara, I read those articles as well and have followed the politics behind this. And what I want to say about that is that this isn't really, in my opinion, this isn't a Quebec issue. This is a human rights issue. It's a national issue. It's a blatant violation, in my opinion, of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And shame on the federal government for not stepping up and dealing with this. I mean, we've been dealing with this since June of 2019, when they passed this terrible law. And I am absolutely flabbergasted that they haven't stepped up, and flabbergasted that the opposition parties haven't insisted they step up. It's an embarrassment that municipalities have to rise to the occasion to try to draw this to the public's attention. And the other thing that I find just unbelievable about this is that the United Nations has to comment on something like this. This would not be something that a country like Canada would ever have raised by a United Nations committee to say, the sorts of things that they're saying with respect to this country. And when the world stage looks at this, they hear Canada. They're not hearing Quebec. This is a reflection on all of us. We can't allow this to stand. This is a slippery slope that all of us, every single Canadian from coast to coast to coast, has to take a stand on. This isn't what our country's all about, and Quebec can't speak for all of us. And frankly speaking, and the last thing I want to say about this is the political folks in Quebec that oppose this, God bless them, but they've had since June 2019 to deal with this. So you know what? I have no problem taking a stake in this and standing strong on this as a municipal councillor and as a municipal councillor. And I would just hope that the synergy that we can create by municipalities getting involved in this process may make the federal politicians, whose very constitution that they're sworn to uphold is being attacked. I really hope that this embarrasses them, that it's the little municipal politicians in all the towns and cities and regions across the country that are starting to discuss this. We're doing their job now, and they really need to step up and they need to defend the Constitution. So of course, I'll be supporting this motion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Knoll. Councillor Duddick.
Thank you, Worship. I apologize if I'm being a little thick in this, but my understanding, as I say at the onset, was that we were dealing with the majority of the motion and then going to be dealing with the financial through Councillor Palmer wanting to propose something. Am I correct then in assuming that if we support everything save and accept any kind of contribution, we should separate that from the motion? Or
No, you're incorrect. As I explained, the language in the clause does not commit you to making a contribution. It merely enables a motion afterwards to be in order to make a contribution, which could be passed or defeated, depending on the will of council. If you do not pass this clause, then a motion to make a donation would not be in order because of our 30-day rule. So I will separate it because I've had two of you, or when we get to the motion, if we ever do, I will ask again if anybody wants to separate those two pieces, and we'll vote on them separately.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. I would appreciate separating it. The reason being, I do not think we have any right weighing into this from a financial standpoint. These are taxpayer dollars, and I do not feel comfortable making a donation or providing funds from taxpayers' dollars to fund this. We have so many causes, so many that are so near and dear to us. We could ream off all kinds of them. The unfortunate part is that, and I commend what you said at the onset, Your Worship, where you said, regardless of what took place, you were going to make a personal donation regardless. And I think that's where we need to land. I think if we want to do something, it's up to each and every one of us around the table to write a check, donate, or not donate if we should so wish, but not on the taxpayer dollars. I'm really, really sorry, but I have a serious problem doing anything with that.
Thank you, Councillor. Not a problem. Next is Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to say that to the comments that were made that we're being asked to stay out of this fight, we also have Quebec residents asking for support. We have racialized, faith practicing individuals who are asking us to get involved and who are asking for support in this fight. Francophones asking people to stay out are not the ones directly impacted. So I want to remind my council colleagues that this bill is being challenged by not-for-profit organizations that are community funded. So it's relatively small organizations like WSO who have one employee against the government of Quebec. We would be joining many other municipalities across Ontario and Canada in providing a small contribution for an issue that affects all Canadians. And I'm saying this now because I realize there may not be the opportunity for me to bring forward a motion on a contribution amount. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Palmer. Councillor Elgar, I believe, is next.
Reverting back to the procedure, I really thought I was asking for a recorded vote on the motion excluding the amount of the contribution so that we could actually discuss the amount of the contribution, which may be zero, and that we would have a total kumbaya on the motion excluding the amount that would be given. If that is what I intended when I asked for a recorded vote that it would be. Am I correct on that logic going forward at this point in time?
You understood the procedural element of this perfectly, and I understood your motion the same way you have explained it.
Thank you.
So, second timers, Councillor O'Meara.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to send around an amendment to the motion that we see before you. And just if you give me a quick second, I'll read it here. With regards to the motion before, the financial one, it says, therefore be it resolved that the town of Oakville continues to strongly oppose Quebec's Bill 21 and supports all legal challenges against the discrimination of religious expression in Quebec's Bill 21. And so I would like to have that one on as an amendment, and it could be a friendly amendment. I'd be happy if it was. If not, then that's fine. And then you know what, I'll just leave it with that one. I have another amendment with the finances, but I can tell by the way we're sort of figure skating around here that we might be doing a few triple cow sows and not get to where we want. So I will send that one to all the members of council at this moment in time. And I would ask that amendment, that we vote on that amendment. And then again, what I will do is I'll just let it go with council with regards to the financial aspect. Obviously, everybody knows everyone's situation here, and one thing I would like to say, Your Worship, I thank you so much for your offer of doubling it. My Ward 1 residents that I connect with never subscribe to supporting Quebec issues, but I personally will do that, and I'll donate $500 personally right now in order to maximize your donation. So thank you very much for that, Your Worship.
All right. I can't accept it as a friendly amendment. You can. It's on the floor because you've moved it, and you don't need a second. But I find it vague and confusing when you say and supports all legal challenges. I don't know what that means. And I think you'd be better. I mean, we're going to separate the clause that you're trying to change and vote on it separately. And I don't have a strong belief that that clause is going to stay in the motion when we separate it. But you're free to move your amendment. In fact, if you're content with, I've accepted your amendment. Let me ask if there are other speakers to the amendment, and if there aren't, I'll put the vote on your amendment. All right, may I put Councillor Haslett-Deal?
So this is so important. I think Russian is not the way we have to go here. In terms of the language, could you just put it up on the screen one more time for us?
Which language? We haven't put any language up on the screen yet.
Sorry. Yeah, I flashed on the messenger. If Sean could, if somebody could take Sean's and put it up on the screen, that would be appreciated.
I believe he sent you an email, right? But the clerks are working on getting that ready for you. Oh, they don't. He didn't send it to them.
Okay. All right. So the amendment that's on the floor is specifically to add this in or to take out something and add it in. Can I ask Councillor O'Meara to speak to that?
He's replacing the clause that you were objecting to earlier.
I'm happy to speak to it, Your Worship. So where it says right now that the town of Oakville continues to oppose Quebec's Bill 21, I'm asking to strongly oppose Bills 21. And then where it says, and support the current legal challenge, I'm supplanting all current legal challenges against the discrimination. So this isn't the last, it won't be the only, and we're taking a stand on this one and this one only. My language changes it to this or the next or the next. So, you know, I'm not sure what the grind is here. I'm trying to say that this is a long battle and we're in it and we're supporting people for the long battle. It's not just with this one legal challenge, be it as it is. I'm saying going forward with legal challenges, and this is the one. That's how I've tried to amend it. This is not a one-time. This is not just we oppose. It's we strongly oppose this as well as the other aspect that I'm raising.
All right, Councillor O'Meara, thank you for clarifying. So, Council, in the clause before the one calling on Parliament, it would read, supports all legal challenges against the discrimination against religious expression in Quebec's bill against discrimination against religious expression in Quebec's Bill 21. And I can accept that as a friendly amendment because it does not change the meaning of the clause. It merely broadens it as I now understand the councillor meant to do. And I thank him for his words. And if we're all clear on that, I'll just point out that this has nothing to do with the clause that Councillor Dudek and Councillor Has that Thiel are having reservations about, if I can put it that way. Councillor Hazard Thiel, is that satisfactory to you?
I just want to thank Councillor O'Meara for clarifying that, and that certainly is helpful.
I agree. Councillor Giddings, I think, is next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question. Support all legal challenges. I take it that is moral support. We aren't getting into financial support once again.
That's right.
Thank you.
So just to cover all the bases, I'm fine with it as a friendly amendment. Councillor Robertson, are you?
I am.
Thank you. All right. With your permission, I will now put the entire motion in front of you, and I will separate the clause that the Town of Oakville Council provide a contribution of an amount to be decided by council to the joint legal challenge of Bill 21 by the organizations listed, and separately from that, and encourage other municipalities and levels of government to contribute to the legal challenge. So we will have 3 things to vote on, and I'm going to just going to take a wild guess here, but I think you'd like to vote first on that the Town of Oakville Council provide a contribution of an amount to be decided by council to the joint legal challenge of Bill 21 by the organizations listed. Is there an objection to that clause? Raise your hand.
Can we have a recorded vote, please?
Sure. Madam Clerk, would you do a roll call vote, please?
Mayor Burton, point of order, can I just ask for clarification?
Sure.
So if we are voting that that section is taken out,
you're voting
what
on, excuse me, you're voting to adopt it or not. If you vote against it, it will be, it will die. It will be no longer part of the motion. So let me start over. So normally, if there's an objection, I count them, and if it's enough to defeat, the item is defeated. But and that's the way we've done it for 2 years now because of COVID. But if, for greater clarity, we'll have a roll call vote of those in favor of this clause. And the clerk will call your name and you'll say yes or no. Madam Clerk? All those in favor of the clause that begins that block, that the Town of Oakville Council provide a contribution of an amount to be decided by Council to the joint legal challenge of Bill 21 by the National Council of Canadian Muslims, the World Sikh Organization, and the Canadian Civil Liberties Association. That is the language that we are now voting for or against. If you are in favor of that language, you will say yes. If you are against that language, you will say no. And you will do so when the clerk calls your name. Madam Clerk, a roll call, please.
Okay, Councillor Adams.
Yes.
Councillor Councillor Duddick.
No.
Councillor Elgar.
Yes on this one, because just for clarification, this is yes, but we're not at this point. We could end up, when we get to the next level, go zero contribution.
Point of order, your worship. I mean, it's a yes or a no. I'm not sure. We don't, much as I love Councillor Elgar, it's a yes or a no here.
Councillor O'Meara, a member has the privilege at all times of asking if he's clear on the motion. And I appreciate your offer to help me, Chair, but this is my job. And Councillor Elgar, you understand it perfectly. And you've been recorded as yes. The next one, please.
Councillor Giddings.
Yes.
Councillor Grant.
Yes.
Councillor Haslett-Theo.
Well, I must say that I find this very confusing and how it's worded. So my answer is no, because of the contribution amount being left in.
Councillor Knoll.
Yes.
Councillor Lischina. No. Councillor Longo.
Yes.
Councillor O'Meara.
No.
Councillor Parmar.
Yes.
Councillor Robertson.
Yes.
Councillor Sandhu.
Yes.
You didn't call me.
And Mayor Burton.
Yes.
Okay.
I declare the motion, or this part of the motion carried. There were 4 against and the rest in favor. The next item is, and encourage other municipalities and levels of government to contribute to the legal challenge against Bill 21. And I would ask you to, for the sake of consistency, to vote again the same way. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll? And you will answer yes if you support that language and no if you want it removed from the main motion.
Councillor Adams.
Yes.
Sorry. I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. Counselor Adams?
That was yes.
Oh, yes, okay. Counselor Dudek?
No,
Counselor Elgar?
No.
Was that a no?
Yes, that was a no.
Counselor Giddings?
No.
Counselor Grant?
Yes.
Counselor Haslett-Theo?
No.
Counselor Knoll?
Yes.
Counselor Lischina?
No.
Counselor Longo?
Yes.
Counselor O'Meara?
No.
Counselor Parmar?
Yes.
Counselor Robertson? Counselor Robertson?
Yes.
Counselor Sandhu?
Yes.
And Mayor Burton?
Yes.
Six noes. Six noes.
How many yes?
6 against. And 8 for.
All right, the result is that the clause carries 8-6. May I put the main motion? Councilor Elgar has asked for a roll call vote or a recorded vote, and I intend to do that again this way. Councilor Haslett-Theo, your hand is up. But you're muted.
So you're saying you're putting the main motion, is it with a dollar amount?
No, ma'am. As I've explained several times,
Well, I don't think I'm thick, but I am finding it quite frustrating to figure out and to express what I really believe I need to do tonight. So if you could be patient with me and take me through it one more time. What is this next motion that we are voting on?
There is no next motion unless someone makes it, but if this passes, a member of council would be able to move a motion to set an amount. And council would then vote for or against making a donation of an amount. And if that failed, then council would be making, if you like, no donation or a donation of 0 either way. I'm sorry if that's confusing. I actually thought it was pretty clear, but you know, I live and learn. So may I put the main motion?
Do we have an opportunity to speak at some point to the dollar amount is what I want to just clarify.
If someone will ever make such a motion, yes. If you only be patient, that'll be, I believe, next.
Thank you.
Councilor Adams.
I'm sorry, I'm only trying to help clarify for the other members of council. I believe you called 3 separate sections of the vote, and we have now dealt fully with section 3 of the motion. And I believe what remains and that you're calling the vote on is parts 1, 2, and 4. So
No.
I'm happy to go for the vote now.
No, you're not helping. We voted on 2 things, not 3. We voted on.
This is the third.
I beg your pardon?
Yes, I understand we voted on 2 things. This is the third thing we're voting on.
We're about to vote on the main motion.
So I'm happy to support. I'm going to support. Never mind.
Councilor O'Meara, I'd like to put the main motion to council. Is that inconvenient for you?
Nope. Waiting was ready to go. The only thing I'd say, Your Worship, is because of the 2 motions, I'll be voting in favor of the main motion, and I hope my council colleagues will join me in that. We're all together as a council, and I support that. So
That's fine. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll? Now, council, to vote for the motion, you will say yes, and to vote against it, you will say no. Madam Clerk.
Councillor Adams?
Yes.
Councillor Dudek?
Yes.
Councillor Elgar,
Yes.
Councillor Giddings,
Yes.
Councillor Grant,
Yes.
Councillor Haslett Theo,
Yes.
Councillor Knoll,
Yes.
Councillor Lischina,
Yes.
Councillor Longo,
Yes.
Councillor O'Meara,
Yes.
Councillor Parmar,
Yes.
Councillor Robertson,
Yes.
Councillor Sandhu,
Yes.
and Mayor Burton.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Councillor Palmer, I recognize you. You have the floor.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you to my council colleagues for voting that way to allow me to put this motion on the floor for Oakville Council to provide a contribution in the amount of $10,000 to the joint legal challenge against Bill 21. And Your Worship, I'd like to request a recorded vote.
Thank you. As you know, a recorded vote is available on request. Councillor Giddings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Parmar, for putting an amount there. While I too have found this a little confusing, I appreciate the fact that the mayor brought this before us this evening. Further to some of the earlier motions, I'm buoyed by the fact that motions such as this are coming before councils across Canada, and that our municipal counterparts are as concerned as we are. The Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms is clear. All Canadians are guaranteed the right to fundamental freedom of conscience and religion. There was talk about the Prime Minister earlier. He has stated that he has not ruled out federal intervention in a legal challenge to this law. He's in profound disagreement with Bill 21, and he hasn't ruled out, as the federal government, intervening at some point in time. I ask that our residents reach out to our Oakville members of parliament and ask them to advise the Prime Minister that now is probably a pretty good time, some point in time, for the federal government to intervene and take action. I cannot support the use of Oakville residents' property tax dollars to do so. I encourage all of our residents, and as Councillor Duddick said, those of us around the table this evening, to contribute our personal tax dollars. The Canadian Civil Liberties Association is doing incredible work, and it's very easy to donate on their website. I can tell you that from personal experience. ccla.org. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Giddings. Councillor Elgar.
Thank you, Mayor Burton. I believe this is an important issue. I truly believe that. My problem is using individual tax dollars from our residents that we will send off for fighting this. I think if the individuals want to fight this, that I really would encourage them to go to any of the organizations, the three of them, and every one of them you can donate money, and you can do that tonight. I look at what happened in Mississauga. Everybody endorses this is wrong, what is happening, and I'm glad that we unanimously voted on what our motion tonight, excluding the dollar amount. I think our town has many things we need. Like I tell you, when I look and see a Fair Share Food Bank Oakville, double demand in the last 9 months. I look at the Oakville Meals on Wheels. I look at the Halton Medical Health needing money. I look at the Halton Women's Place needing money for women that are leaving abusive relationships. Like, there's no end of where we need to give money to if we have surplus money. This is important. I realize it. Trudeau has said that he's not done with this yet. He may step into the ring. for sure, and so he should. It's a federal issue with the province. So one thing I did notice, though, the council in Winnipeg, what they decided there, they said, well, councillors have an option to use their discretionary office funds. And if they want to use them, they could. But, you know, I'm not saying that's what we should do, but that's what they said. They didn't pass anything where the council was going to give money, but they said the individuals could. So I'm hoping that, similar to what Burlington did in Mississauga, that we do not ourselves decide to spend taxpayers' money on this, and the taxpayers themselves can decide that. And I'll be voting against this portion of the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Elgar. Other speakers, or shall I start the vote? Councillor Haslett-Thiel.
Thank you, Mayor Burton. I think what Councillor Elgar and Councillor Giddings said, I don't want to repeat myself, but I do want to speak to the fact that, you know, we're being asked tonight to fund litigation, and this is absolutely a worthy cause. The residential school litigation was also a worthy cause, and there will be other battles that come forward that are worthy causes. And at some point you have to ask yourself, what is the role of council in this regard? And I absolutely agree with several councillors' comments about how we need to stand up and shake those individuals who are accountable and have a direct responsibility to step into the fray now. And I think we can do that by raising our voices and by making, by the vote we just had. I strongly encourage everyone to go to the websites of the World Sikh Organization, the National Council of Muslims, the Canadian Civil Liberties Association. There is an incredible amount of valuable, good information there for you to share with your families about the charter and about this cause, and about the fact that how they do their work. And in part, lots of them do their work proud that they're independent of government, because they are in this to do what's right and just. And thankfully, we have individuals who do make those donations. So I too have already made a donation to the organization, and I encourage others to do it. And I think part of our role at council is to encourage individuals to participate in democracy. And so to me, my choice tonight is to endorse the spirit of this motion, but to really say, each of you out there that have called or written and really care about the charter and about solving this problem, you can help. And you can help by making a donation to these organizations and raising your voice. And that's what we've done tonight. And that's what I'd be prepared to do, but I would not be prepared to put taxpayer dollars out on this cause.
Thank you, Councillor Haslett-Thiel. Madam Clerk, there being no other speakers, would you please do the roll call recorded vote?
Okay.
Council, you will answer yes to support the donation of $10,000 moved by Councillor Palmer, and you will vote no to oppose it. Madam Clerk.
Councillor Adams?
Yes?
Councillor Dudek?
No.
Councillor Elgar?
No.
Councillor Giddings?
No.
Councillor Grant?
Yes.
Councillor Haslett-Thiel?
No.
Councillor Knoll?
Yes.
Councillor Lischina?
No.
Councillor Longo?
No.
Councillor O'Meara?
No.
Councillor Parmar?
Yes.
Yes. Councillor Robertson?
Yes.
Councillor Sandhu?
Yes.
Mayor Burton?
Yes. Council, it was close, but the motion fails on a tie. under the Municipal Act, a tie is a loss. And so now I will make good on my promise to donate $10,000, and I'll go further. I will match the donation of any member of council. And all you have to do is let me know if you made a donation, and I'll match it to the organization you gave it to. So thank you, everybody, for a very interesting discussion and item. I think the next item before us is 9.2, the business licensing bylaw review update. And I know that you've studied this carefully. Councillor Adams?
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I'm not sure if staff are going to do any kind of presentation or not. I don't really need one. I've looked at the material. I just had one area that I wanted to ask staff about or provide some feedback to, and it's with respect to the sale of fireworks. Within the report, it suggests considering extending the period of time that fireworks can be sold up to 10 days. And I'd like to give feedback to staff to ask them to bring back one that instead of extending the period of time, reduces it to 5 days. It's probably one of the #1 issues that we hear about every summer when every one of the long weekend holidays where fireworks are allowed, that people are just outraged by the disruption that's caused by the fireworks being misused. And many people ask us to ban the sale of fireworks in Oakville. I think that that's problematic for a whole bunch of reasons that this council has previously dealt with. But that's one piece of feedback that I'd like to give our staff and ask them to come back with a modification.
So are you moving deferral?
No, sir. As I understand the item that's before us, it is that the comments from council and the public with respect to the business licensing review be received, and that the Director of Municipal Enforcement Services be authorized to continue bylaw preparations in accordance with the direction set out within this report, considering any comments received, and report back with a new licensing bylaw at a future council meeting.
Well, then,
so
could
it's
we,
in that spirit that I'm giving these comments.
Could I make a suggestion? How about you move that staff make it 5 days, and that might very well pass rather than just leaving it as a comment. But staff would benefit from knowing the will of council, I'm thinking. I see your hands, councillors, but
then yes,
one at a time, please. Councillor Adams?
So then, yes, I'd be happy to make that motion. I did correspond with our director previously on this matter, and he did suggest that I bring it up as a comment, but I would also be happy to have it included within the minutes of the meeting.
Well, I think it'd be good for staff.
I will help you out, Your Worship, and give you a motion that we pass recommendation #1, and that #2 be that comments from council and the public with respect to the business licensing review be received, including that the sale of fireworks be restricted to 5 days.
Thank you.
I don't have the exact wording in front of me here.
Well, I think that's bound to be helpful to staff, because otherwise they're guessing about the rest of us.
Yep. Agreed.
Councillor Haslett-Thiel, Councillor Knoll, and Councillor O'Meara, you're next.
Thank you, Mayor Burton. I'm wondering about the section that talks about wishing to provide direction, or direction could be added regarding full food truck licensing review, including consultation with the industry, the residents, the BIA on a strategy and a framework. We have had, we've had back and forth, requests around food trucks and where can they be, and do we have enough of them, and how do they complement a BIA, or do they are they a negative impact? What I think it's worthy of providing that statement to say they should undertake a full food truck licensing review to make sure that we understand what we can offer our residents, and what a potential small business might offer our community as well.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure they'll note that. Councillor Knoll?
I'm sorry to be the skunk at the garden party here, and maybe I should have asked for a point of order, but I would really like to hear the report. This is a really important piece of business, in my opinion. There's a ton of work put in this, and I think that at least a summary of what it is we're about to vote on and discuss for the purposes of those who are watching or for the media, I think is very important. There's not a lot more important that a council does than pass bylaws, and I think this is one of the more fundamental bylaws that we get to pass. So I would like to hear at least a summary report from the staff.
Councillor, let me help you out. We're not passing a bylaw. We're giving suggestions. We're giving suggestions to staff to guide their preparation of this bylaw.
I understand, but it's part of the consultation process to get to a comprehensive licensing bylaw. So that's why I feel it's important that this is part of the consultation, in my opinion. Even if it's a summary report, I would like to hear it.
Well, I hope the report that you were given was satisfactory, but Selena Campbell, the Manager of Enforcement Services, is standing by and able to give you that presentation.
Thank you, Your Worship, and members of council. I do have a presentation prepared. Excellent, thank you. There it is. Just going to start my video here so you can all see me. Perfect. Okay, so good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. I am here to speak to item number 9.2 on tonight's agenda. It's a report to authorize the Municipal Enforcement Services to continue with bylaw preparations in accordance with the directions set out within this report, considering any comments received tonight and throughout the remainder of the review, as you've all noted. So the licensing bylaw 2015-075 came into effect over 6 years ago, and it requires a review because it has been a number of years since it has had a thorough review. There have been several amendments to this bylaw, including the addition of e-cigarette retailer licensing on March 1st of 2021. In this presentation, I will provide an overview of the guiding principles and significant proposed changes. We could get the next slide, please. The licensing bylaw was developed considering guiding principles established by council, including that bylaw regulations consider public health and safety, consumer protection, nuisance control, and the general well-being of persons. Further guiding principles in line with accountable governance were established to consider economic development with the focus on reducing red tape for businesses and a review of opportunities for fee reductions. Financial responsibility, considering how we can leverage technology and streamline internal processes to create efficiencies and to be customer focused, creating digital opportunities and to simplify the bylaw format. Next slide, please. Considering our guiding principles, staff is proposing a significant change to the licensing intake, review, and issuance processes by introducing an endorsement system. There is currently licensing overlap for some businesses that provide more than one service, which can result in the need of multiple licenses. For an example, a gas station that also sells food and cigarettes needs a motor vehicle facility license to sell gas, a food shop license to sell food, and a tobacco retailer license to sell cigarettes. The applicant in this example has to submit a separate application for each license, and in some cases, the same documentation for each one. The applicant must also pay a separate fee for each license. This need for multiple licensing creates duplication of work for businesses and staff. In order to address this issue, staff is proposing the introduction of licensing endorsements for certain business classes. Endorsements would be added to the main business license, so whatever the primary business is, to create a single licensing system. The gas station would apply for their primary license, which would be the motor vehicle facility, submitting any additional documents required for the endorsed business classes, like the food shop and the tobacco retailer. The application would be reviewed once, and a single license would be issued permitting all three uses. The applicant would pay for one license with endorsements rather than three separate licenses. A single license system would simplify the process for business. Business owners would only need to worry about a single license renewal each year, as endorsements would expire at the same time as their primary business license. Staff will conduct a process review and adjust fees to reflect any savings. Next slide, please. Staff is proposing to institute licensing thresholds. All business classes where an applicant is required to provide a criminal record check or a criminal record and judicial matters check. This will ensure that all applicant or licensees have a clear understanding of how their criminal record relates to their licensing status. It will also ensure consistency when the licensing commissioner reviews criminal record and judicial matter checks. Convictions that directly affect the licensee, the applicant, or the licensee's ability to competently and responsibly carry on the business that is subject to their license, or those that compromise their ability to comply with the provisions of the bylaw would be included. Thresholds would not apply to offenses for which a pardon has been granted. Overdue fines and other amounts owing to the town and any outstanding orders would also be included. Next slide, please. The past year has highlighted some changing business trends as services become more mobile and are provided at a person's home rather than a brick and mortar business. In recognition of these changes, staff want to ensure the same principles of licensing are applied to all licensed services, whether mobile or stationary. New language is proposed to include mobile motor vehicle service and mobile personal service operations. A mobile motor vehicle service is a business that is operated from place to place, offering or providing motor vehicle facility product or service, such as oil changes, tire changes, glass repair, but excludes tow trucks. A motor vehicle facility with a valid Oakville license would not need a separate license to provide mobile motor vehicle services, but a business that is solely mobile or has a brick and mortar garage in another municipality and provides mobile services in Oakville would need a mobile license. Mobile personal services is a personal service business that is operated from place to place, offering or providing personal service products or services such as hairdressing and barbering, manicures and pedicures. A licensed personal service business would not need a separate license to provide mobile personal services. However, each employee who provides mobile personal service must register with the licensing commissioner annually and provide a criminal records and judicial matters check. This is recommended as these employees would be entering into a dwelling to provide services and may be dealing with vulnerable people. Next slide, please. Staff is also recommending the introduction of several new licensing types. These include payday loan establishments, as was requested by Council on September 23rd, 2019. Mobile vehicle and personal services, as described. Private parking enforcement contractors and officers to ensure quality of service, timely submissions, and recourse if regulations are not followed. Temporary vendors, and this is to provide clarification to the licensing class, and it rolls the outdoor market and special sales into the temporary vendor class. Clarification is also suggested to exempt businesses, as well as prohibiting temporary vendors from operating in the BIAs without permission from the BIA and the town. Staff is also recommending the removal of bowling alleys due to the low risk and limited service. Next slide, please. So before you is the recommendation for your consideration, and I am available for any questions. And I'll thank Councillor Adams in advance for his comments. They have been noted.
Thank you. And his comment may even be a direction depending on where council goes with all this. Councillor Knoll, are you satisfied? Do you have any comments to add or items to add? And if not, I'll move to Councillor O'Meara and Councillor Lischina.
I would like to comment. Again, I sort of intimated in my request for the report. This is a particularly a great piece of work. I thank the staff for all the effort they've put into this and the consultation. And I'm particularly happy with the results of the payday loan piece that a few of us, I think actually all of us have been pushing up the hill for a while. So thank you for that. And just one last little personal comment on this particular matter, and then I will happily allow this to pass and allow the staff to get the work done on it. But I had for the first time the opportunity to use the online business licensing portal today. And I want to thank the staff for that. It was a tremendous resource. It was very easy to use. And I think that businesses across this town are going to be very happy with the modernization of the processes. So once again, thank you all. And I know you already have a motion, but I would have been happy to move this myself. But thank you for the work.
Thank you. And thank you very much for your the marks you're giving our shift to being a digital town. Councillor O'Meara and then Councillor Lischina.
Thank you, Your Worship. Always getting used to lowering the hand once I speak, or else it stays up there forever. Just a question, Selena, with regards to the temporary vendors. You know, as we move forward and more things are outdoor, and particularly in Bronte with the Bronte Market Square going to be opening up this year, are we going to be making it more difficult for the BIA, for vendors, if we wanted to do a farmer's market or we want to do things in Bronte? What do you mean by a temporary vendor's permit? What's the difference between what we're doing now and what we did before? And how are we streamlining that to make it easier?
Through you, Your Worship. Thank you, Councillor Mara. We are trying to make that easier, really providing the clarification within that business licensing class. There will be exemptions for markets, depending if they're town run, if they're under a town permit, in which case they may not require a license, but they would have to meet other requirements set by the town as part of their permit. So it really does depend on how the event is structured and who's sort of responsible for it. But we are looking at providing some exemptions for specific events that are under those permits.
Okay, thanks. So if I'm a vendor wondering what I'm going to do in Bronte, I'm not really sure where that leaves me. There's a lot of maybe if, ands, or buts. If we do this or we do that, we don't know. But I guess what I would ask, I'll just end on two things. As long as Bylaw is willing to work and make it as easy as possible for vendors to take part in our BIAs and our local communities, I'm happy with that commitment right now. And the last thing I would do is maybe just speak to Councillor Adams' motion, I guess. I'm not sure if it's still on the floor, Your Worship, but just with regards to 5 days to 7 days, I'm not really sure that that takes away from the issue. I mean, you know, 5 days, 7 days, people who are intent on flouting our firework bylaws, whether they buy them beforehand or afterhand or whatever hand, I'm not really sure that that's going to solve the problem. And some people who do go away to cottages, who plan ahead and want to, you know, bring some stuff up for the dock up somewhere north. I mean, I don't know if that helps them or hurts them. So I'd like some clarification on that, maybe from yourself or Director Barry. Thank you very much, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor O'Meara. Next is Councillor Lischina and then Councillor Haslett-Deal.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for the presentation, Selena. Couple of questions, actually, and my apologies if I missed this in a report, but when it comes to mobile and personal services, is pet grooming part of the personal services section? Or like if you have a mobile unit driving around to people's homes to work with pets or clean them up, that's a separate one? Did I miss that?
Through you, Your Worship, you are correct. It is different. It would be personal services directed towards human clients and not animal services.
So there is one for the animal services, the mobile unit or mobile service for
groomers
animal service.
At this point, no, but it certainly is something that we can take away.
Okay, because there's a number of those now. And my second question is about food trucks. I guess I'm just trying to understand. Councillor Haslett-Deal had mentioned about a review for us in the north. I just remember prior to COVID when Councillor Adams and I were dealing with our local fair here, we were having trouble attracting food trucks from other locations because there wasn't a one-day ability to get a permit. It was, you know, for the whole summer kind of thing. So is, and again, my apologies if I missed that as well, would that opportunity arise this time around?
Your worship, we are doing a review of the special event food truck licensing, that sort of thing as well. We have noted that the criminal record check requirements and some of the operator requirements have been pretty onerous for some of the applicants. So that is part of the review that we're conducting, and we are looking at making some changes to streamline that process to make those special event licenses easier for them to obtain.
And it's just to clarify, it's not that they don't have that already at a different municipality. It's just that they would have to get it again here is what my question was. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Lischina. Councillor Haslett-Thiel.
Well, thank you, Councillor Lischina, because I wanted some clarity as well on that. So, so they're under refreshment vehicles. And the wording you have in here says that you require direction for it to be added for a full review. So I'm only one voice. If other people think that this should be done, I don't know when that comes up, but I do think it's important, whether it's a single event or multiple days in the summer. We have lots of parks, and how this all comes together, I think it'd be good to have a fulsome review. So I'll leave it at that. Hopefully you and Director Barry note that at least one councillor would like that. Under the motor vehicle storage yard, I just want to make sure, are we really saying that it could take up to 7 days for the person who's taken someone's vehicle and put it in the storage yard? They could have up to 7 days from the date of the phone call asking to get their car to respond. Maybe I've misinterpreted this, but I thought one of our frustrations was they were taking people's cars and not giving them back. Thank you for that question, Councillor. And through you, Your Worship, I'll just have a look at that. It's from my recollection, I believe the requirement is that they contact within 24 hours, I think is the requirement, that they do have to respond back. So we did set a 7-day limit. I think it was as far as the billing and maximum charges that they could put in, but I not sure whether or not Jim has pulled that section up, but I will certainly look into that. And if you have any specific requests with respect to that section, we're certainly happy to hear any comments, and we can take those away for further review. I just ask you to take a second look at it. It read to me like somebody could be waiting 7 days before they got action, and I'll leave it with you to just take a look at. Thank you very much for all your hard work on this. It must have been a lot of compiling and reviewing, and your diligence is appreciated. Thank you, Councillor. Director Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and to Councillor Haslett-Thiel. I see what you're saying in that clause, so we'll definitely take a look at that. And the other piece around food trucks, I would recommend adding that to the motion, because that would be, we would review this in 2 phases. The first phase would be looking at the licensing bylaw as a totality, what you have before you. And then we'd break out the food truck strategy, because that will require some independent consultation with BIAs, the food truck industry and others. So we wouldn't want to hold the licensing bylaw up for that piece. And we do know, even in the last round of licensing bylaw reviews 6 years ago, that did come up, although there wasn't really a driving force from the industry at that time. So at this point, if that was added to the motion, we could include that in our work plan, and we would get on that as soon as the licensing bylaw work was done.
Thank you, Director Barry. To assist us, if we add nothing to this motion, you're free to do as you advise on this. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes. If you do nothing, we will continue that. That'll fall into our work plan. It would just be not as prioritized as if it were directed by council.
All right. Well then, Councillor Haslett-Thiel, would you like to move an amendment to the recommendation asking the department to make the food truck review a priority.
Well, if I understood Director Barry, it wouldn't be a priority over the licensing, but it would go into the queue. And could I ask a clarifying question, Director Barry? Does this take, I wouldn't want it to take priority over things like the noise bylaw.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, the work on the noise bylaw, and we have property standards bylaw as well. Those are already in our work plan. We would add this. It may bump some other bylaws, but they definitely wouldn't bump those.
Right. Well, then I'd like to have it added. Thank you.
All right. So I hope with a permitted level of humor, the amendment is to make the food truck review a priority, but not to be a greater priority than property standards or noise bylaw. Right? Okay, Councillor Adams.
Thanks very much. And in an effort to help with the process, I just want to give you a motion that would include the words on page 138 that the municipal enforcement undertake a full food truck licensing review, including consultation with the industry, residents, and BIAs to develop a strategy framework for future licensing opportunities and report back to council at a later date. And I think your comments about the timing are perfect. And with respect to the fireworks item, I would add that we include the words that the licensing bylaw provide that consumer fireworks may only be sold 5 days prior to Victoria Day, Canada Day, New Year's Day, and any religious or cultural celebrations where fireworks are used to celebrate the religious or cultural event, as per our wording here.
All right, so council, the motion by Councillor Adams is in order, and it's very kindly included Councillor Haslett-Thiel's concern. I just want to point out that this does not, as worded, constitute making a decision on the bylaw. The bylaw will come back with a 5-day proviso if you pass this, but it still has to be passed and can still be amended by council on that occasion. If that's of any help to any of you who were concerned about the 5-day, and I'm looking at you, Councillor O'Meara, and you're recognized now because your hand's up.
Thank you, Worship. I'm sorry, I'm lost in pages here. Can Councillor Adams just tell me where the change to the firework 5-day wording is located?
Yes, on page 132 of our agenda, which is page 16 of 26 of this report, under fireworks vendors, you will find the second bullet where it describes the current licensing bylaw provides that consumer fireworks may only be sold 7 days and so on.
Perfect. I got it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so that's where I'm drawing the wording from.
Thank you very much. Sorry, if it's my turn to speak to that. I agree with everything that's on the table. I just, again, I'm I know staff will go away and look at it. I just, again, 5 to 7 days. This is the definition of red tape adding in here. I don't understand what purpose it serves or how it makes. I know it might make people feel warm and fuzzy, but I'm just, let's just move on. Let's let people do what they do. And there are a lot of good families out there who think ahead a week and a half and want to sort of plan. So I would be against that portion of the amendment, but everything else I'm in favor with Councillor Adams on. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor O'Meara. I'm happy to separate that item out so that you can record your opposition to it. Councillor Knoll, you're next.
Thank you. Nobody on this council has complained more about firework issues, I think, than me, or I'm certainly tied with my colleagues, other colleagues. But I don't think that, first of all, I think that doing that creates a false narrative that somehow it's going to have an impact on fireworks in town. It won't. And secondly, I think the thing is that it's essentially going to drive business across the borders. If people want to buy their fireworks 7 days in advance, they'll go to Mississauga, which puts our local businesses behind, and that's unfortunate. We need to put real teeth in fireworks enforcement is where we really have to spend our time and effort. on the days where fireworks are permitted. We need to be able to mobilize as much as we can, educate in advance. And I don't think that shifting 2 days is going to make a big difference in it. And Councillor O'Meara, I think, was right. It's more red tape than anything. And I think it's unfair to the businesses and to the families that, buy fireworks and discharge them safely and courteously. I wouldn't want to get in the way of those folks enjoying their respective cultural or national holidays.
All righty. Thank you, Councillor Knoll. Councillor Duddick.
Thank you, Worship. Just to reiterate what Councillor Knoll just mentioned, when I and Councillor DeMoss first introduced the fireworks bylaw, we thought we were going to be achieving something that was really going to make some sort of a difference. And sadly, as Councillor Knoll has indicated, unless you have the enforcement component, no amount of days, numbers, and that is really going to have any kind of impact unless they can attend the site and charge the people accordingly. So I'm in agreement.
Thank you, Councillor Duddick. I think it's time to make a decision. I'm going to ask if there's any objection to including in this motion the change from 7 to 5 days. If there is an objection, please raise your hand. This is where Councillor Duddick, Councillor Knoll, and thank you very much. 1, 2, 3. Oh, don't take your hands down quite so fast. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right. It's gone. Is there an objection to the rest of the motion? Councillor Adams, do you have an objection to the rest of the motion?
Given that piece didn't pass, I want to clarify that we're not moving from 7 days to 5 days. We're moving from 10 days to 5 days because there currently is 7. And so given that the staff report suggests 10 and the 5 failed, I would like to suggest that we maintain 7, which is where we are now. Could we try 7, please?
All right. Is there an objection to Councillor Adams's amendment to put 7 in? Put your hands up, please, and give me a sporting chance to count them. 1. Okay. Have you all got your hands up? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Councillor Adams, instead of a tie, that was a loss. But it's the same, well, what I mean, that was a bigger loss than a tie. May I put the main motion? Having been cleansed of calendar changes, is there any objection to the rest of the motion? Madam Clerk, I see no objection and it is carried unanimously. Thank you, everybody. Yes. I'll help you with it later. All right, Council, we do not have a presentation for discussion item 9.3, but you do have the report. This is the Town of Oakville response to Build and Altus Group's report on municipal reserves and development charges. Councillor Knoll.
Be happy to move the recommendation.
Thank you. Any objection? Seeing none, the report is adopted. 9.4 is the election sign regulations review. And as you know from having read it, the only material change is to prohibit election signs from in front of cenotaphs. There is no presentation. And I'm looking, I think it's time to make a decision if you're ready. Who wants to offer a decision? Councillor O'Meara, you're moving the staff recommendation. Thank you, sir. Any objection? Madam Clerk, there being none, that's carried. Now, you also have no presentation on 9.5, which is the staff analysis of the leaked draft recommendations report of the province's Housing Affordability Task Force. And Councillor Grant.
I'll, pardon me, I'll move receipts of the motion.
Thank you. Councillor O'Meara.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do have a few questions for staff if it's appropriate.
Well, it's in order, and Commissioner Garvey and Sully are available for questions. And after yours, we'll turn to Councillor Elgar.
Thank you, Your Worship. And they are in a bit of a hierarchical class here. And I guess the first thing, one of our major key facts here that we've put in is that if implemented, many recommendations would undermine the land use planning and negatively affect development and approval processes in our town. Is that not the entire intent of this document? I guess I'm asking staff it seems to be a phrase, but is that not the entire intent of this document, is to upset and turn over the apple cart about what municipalities are doing, or am I missing something here?
Councillor, whether we can speak to their intent, the effect would be, as you say. Absolutely, you're correct.
Okay, well, I think, and I appreciate that, Your Worship. I guess the intent is important to know, because the whole document is devoid really of intent. And I guess the intent of things is to do things different from what I've got, whether that's right or wrong. I mean, the intent is to turn this thing on its head. So a lot of what I read is, you're going to be changing things, doing things different. And I was a little front on that, but I guess my one question is, how do we fit in with environmental organizations on this, in particular environmental defense, who, as most of us know, we're going through Save the Farmland defense and these sort of things. And I'm really wondering how this document interfaces with the environmental organizations that are saying what we need to do. I'm wondering if staff might be able to speak to that dynamic between this document and environmental organizations who, as we know, we're all in a climate emergency. How do we take this document and manifest it within the environmental climate that we're in?
Well, Councillor, while we bring Commissioner Garvey in, I can take the first crack at that. I've been involved with Environmental Defence Canada for many years, and I can tell you that they've been advocating many of these proposals for a long time. I anticipate that they will not be happy with the recommendation that, in effect, gets rid of heritage protection, but all of the intensification concepts would be, I imagine, welcomed by EDC.
So would you say, Your Worship, then the EDC's welcoming would be counter to what our staff are proposing in residential neighborhoods then?
I would say that there has been a drive for a long time to end the kind of zoning that we have in Oakville, and to do as the task force is recommending. Oakville, up to now, has been going a different direction. The Livable Oakville Plan, which we adopted unanimously in 2009 with broad community support, sets out to protect the stable, established neighborhood streets we live on. The recommendation of the task force plainly seeks to turn that over. Commissioner, do you have additional comments for the councillor?
I think you summarized it very well, Mr. Mayor, and through you to the councillor. I will add, it's important to know that under legislation, the municipalities are compelled to add second suites to their all areas of town. So there are some provisions that are inherent in the current legislation that provides some level of intensification in stable neighborhoods. But Mr. Mayor, you summarized the foundations and principles of livable Oakville quite well. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Garb. My last question really is with regards to page 13. The first paragraph states that we know the housing market in Oakville continues to evolve quickly, and demand has been shifting from grade-related housing to mid-rise and more apartment buildings. Where is the data on that? Where is the data that it's not just because people can't afford it, so the only thing they can afford is mid-rise or high-rise, but that they don't want grade-related housing, they want different housing? Where's our data on that?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, we can look at the trends in terms of the types of development that we're seeing. So that indicates a shift away from ground-related to a product that's more intense, specifically in our urban growth centers, in our nodes and corridors. There is consumer preference shifting, but there's also affordability issues. It's not cut and dry. It's not either or. It's not both. It's probably both and. It's what people can afford and what people are adjusting their lifestyles to. As everyone on council has experienced in different segments of the market, they have children who want to find affordable housing. They have aging relatives that want to find appropriate housing in their community. So there's a myriad of reasons, and I'm not sure that we can specifically say that there's a single reason that the market is shifting. However, we know based on the evidence that we're seeing in terms of building permits that the shift is occurring.
And I guess that's my question though, is, I mean, you know, the evidence you're seeing is based upon building permits, but that's because they're only building things that are going to sell for a certain cost. I mean, it seems to me counterintuitive that, you know, we're judging a market based on a market demand that's only demanding one thing, and the only thing people can afford, because of a myriad of reasons that are in this report, is that, you know, would people love a $1.5 million grade level house? Yes. Can they only afford a $500,000, and that's what people are building? I mean, I guess it's the chicken and the egg. How are we so committed to the fact that that's the demand because that's what's selling, but what's selling is what's being made, and what's being made is what's most profitable? I guess how do we link those chains together? It seems to me a little forward thinking with regards to what people actually want compared to what they can afford.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I love this type of discussion and debate. I think that there's a lot of things that play into the market, and people who want to live specifically in Oakville have choices to make. They can choose to buy a product that they can afford. Some people would prefer to buy a $1.5 million condominium versus a $1.5 million townhouse, or a $1.5 million bungalow with land. So there is people's preference. It is very complex, and there are lots of factors involved with it. So can I say with certainty that the market is preferring one for one reason or another? That's not the case, but we can see the trend that there is a demand for this type of housing, and it could be because of affordability, it could be because of preference, it could be personal choice. People want to live on transit-supportive corridors. There's many reasons, and we know that there's a demand for it. So you're right, it is somewhat circular, but that is the best that we can do with the information that we have.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. And I'll leave on this and let Commissioner just fill in. I would appreciative staff can get some real data on what it is people would want, regardless of money. What is it they're looking for, rather than what is it that cost can allow them to have? And I'll just leave as well, in this report, when we report back to the province, I would absolutely like to see climate change, Ontario building code policies in our response. I would love to see, we would favor and factor in densities, 4 stories, these sort of things, if the Ontario building code allowed for climate change, environmental capacities, whether it be EV chargers, these sorts of things. So anyway, thank you, Your Worship. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Councillor. CAO Closey also had a contribution to make to your questions.
I just wanted to actually add to, thank you, Mayor Burton. I wanted to add to Commissioner Garvey's comments. It is a complex issue in terms of what's the demand for high rise or any type of housing, actually. But I would note that a lot of the work that we've done around the public works sites, for example, other high density sites, even around Midtown, there is a stronger market for high density housing, not solely because of the affordability, but the attractiveness because of increases in transit and accessibility that the municipality has now that it didn't previously. So there is data that's been collected on the market specifically that says that there is an increase in demand. I would acknowledge, though, that I'm sure an element of that is affordability, but it's neither one or the other. It's a combination of those factors that drive it. So there is data and available through the work that has been done.
Thank you. Councillor Elgar, then Councillor Dudek, Councillor Robertson, Councillor Giddings.
Thank you. Through Mayor Burton, I'd just like to say thank you to the staff. I realize this is only a draft report that came out in mid-January. And I believe, if I'm right, that this committee wasn't even put together until December. So I kind of question how much work the committee actually put into this. And I'm wondering, when does the final report come out? I thought it was going to be today.
The report was due to the minister today, the end of the month. The minister will release or not release whatever he chooses to release when he chooses to make those decisions.
So would it be possible for a commissioner to just highlight a few of the issues of concern for Oakville and staff in this report? I know we're just receiving it, but there is an awful lot of information here that people should be aware of if anybody is watching this on our through our YouTube.
Councillor, we've covered that extensively last week in the newsletter, and we will again tomorrow. And I assure you that'll get a much bigger audience as well as your own. So, but sure, Commissioner, would you like to summarize the report that we're discussing?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Elgar. Very, very briefly, the foundation of our Livable Oakville plan is really centered around the protection of our natural heritage and open space and cultural heritage. It also is intent on maintaining the character of established residential areas and directing growth to an identified system of nodes and corridors. So where the draft report, the LEAP report, starts to undermine those principles in things like as-of-right permissions of up to 4 stories in all residential areas, the as-of-right conversion of commercial properties to residential, limiting heritage preservation processes, limiting the number of public engagement meetings, the increase in fees to third-party appeals to $10,000, allowing appeals of BOP by builders and developers. They all start to undermine and erode the foundations that Livable Oakville was built upon, and especially things around public engagement and the loss of third-party or the limiting of third-party.
I appreciate that. I think maybe that'll wake up a few people to realize that this really guts almost everything we have in our official plan now. So I thank you for that. And I look forward to the final report. I hope it's a little bit less scary. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Elgar. I can tell you that at the summit that the minister and the premier held with the 40 mayors and chairs of the GTHA, they were quite on board with the recommendations, such as they were described by the chair of the task force. The mayors did point out that some of these proposals didn't seem to, well, actually, we didn't see all of the proposals at that point, but the ones we were told about, to us, didn't appear to do anything to increase affordable housing. It only appeared to increase the convenience and profits of builders. And there was no municipal voice on the task force, but there was a builder voice on the task force and a real estate voice on the task force and a banking voice on the task force. So maybe there's no surprise to what we got there. Councillor Robertson, then Councillor Giddings, then Councillor Duddick.
Thank you for the report. Yes, I understand what this means in terms of challenges to livable Oakville. Commissioner Garb, I just want to ask you, in terms of suites, could you tell the public what we mean by suites? I know that I'm part of the Seniors Working Advisory Group, and they get really excited that maybe they could put their own little tiny house in their backyard and, you know, stay there while their family members, or they rent their main house out to other people. What do we mean by suites?
For some reason, you're muted, Commissioner. We are still not hearing you.
Perhaps CAO Cloyce could answer that one.
Well, let's see. CAO Cloyce.
So I actually think we should follow up with a bit of a memo on this, but my understanding of the suites, and I will look at Neil as I say this, is that the intent is that it's an accessory suite within the main dwelling of the house. It doesn't allow for separate dwellings because there are yard and built requirements that any zone would try and protect for within their neighborhoods. So it allows for a suite within the existing dwelling. There are some exceptions to that, though. I think in the uptown area, there are some suites that are allowed within a garage, I'll say, but as a separate element. So in specific areas of the town, there has been some exceptions that have been made. But I think those are the general provisions that are applicable in the zoning bylaw. He's shaking his head yes, so.
Thank you. That's especially what I wanted them to know.
So council will look forward to that report, CAO. Councillor Giddings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For you to Commissioner Closey, I suppose. As Councillor Elgar said, this certainly does a good job of gutting a lot of our planning. With the upcoming Heritage District Review downtown, this would obviously have a possible crushing effect on heritage areas. Would it be possible to bring this forward as an agenda item at the Heritage Advisory Committee?
Councillor,
through you, Mayor Burton, certainly we could arrange for that to come to the Heritage Committee.
Yeah, your wish is our command.
Boy, I've got a few more.
Well, keep wishing.
In terms of seek to limit the ability of municipalities to recover the true cost of growth. I don't think we've recovered the true cost of growth for at least a decade. So this is certainly concerning. as a number of them. Was there any good news as a result of it? Did anyone anywhere suggest that perhaps one of the most efficient ways of moving to prevent climate change or mitigate climate change would be to possibly upgrade the Ontario Building Code, something along those lines? Any talk of that at all?
Councillor Giddings, there was no discussion of that. That's not a big desire of the building industry.
But I thought climate, sorry, I digress. No, I understand the concerns over, Councillor O'Meara mentioned, if you're priced out of low-rise, you're going to be moving to high-rise. And there are so many other factors, whether it be the 40,000 long-term care bed deficit forcing seniors to stay in their home with hired PSWs and a number of other things. I'm afraid they just scratched the surface, and a number of municipalities are going to bleed as a result of that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Duddick.
Thank you, Your Worship. I appreciate Councillor Giddings raising the heritage issue. That was exactly what I was going to raise as well. And it's interesting, several of us around the table this evening have talked about our official plan and the impact to the public participation. But I noted in staff's report that they said that a key theme that runs throughout Ontario, not only ours, Ontario's Planning Act, is public consultation and participation, and that a top-down approach is rarely successful. I think as discussions will probably ensue in the days to come, I would maybe raise the issue of an upcoming provincial election, and the fact that I dare say this, along with many other issues, will be a key factor for not only the current government, but any of the competing parties that are trying to form the government. So I would encourage as many people as possible to participate, make your views known, make them known to your current MPP, let them know that you're not pleased with what's being proposed. I will say that prior to several situations had whereby the government did listen to us, thank God, when it came to amalgamation. I commend them for that, and I remain hopeful that they will once again listen to us and throw this out. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duddick. I was reminded by something that Councillor Giddings just said about the cost of growth. And I'd like to recall for everybody's benefit that in 1998, the government of Ontario amended the Development Charges Act to create several exemptions of the costs of growth for builders, which had the effect of shifting those costs onto taxpayers. And they also, which the present government has relieved, and we thank them for that. But they also introduced a peculiar formula that limits what a community can establish as a service standard for its residents and recover through development charges. And that's, you can't charge for more than the average of what you had over the last 10 years. And that means that there's a continuing degradation of the level of service that you can provide residents if you're a community that's growing. And challenged about this at the committee hearings for second reading, I read in Hansard, the associate minister responsible for the bill explained that the government's desire was to prevent municipalities with growth from using growth to improve themselves, lest communities that didn't have growth would be jealous. So it's it's a perverse concept, and it's been with us since 1998. And the government that got elected in 2003 actually promised to reverse that and then did not. In fact, they didn't change any of it. It was only this government that removed the exemptions, which has been a bit of a benefit to us. However, it remains true that growth does not pay for growth. And with that, we need a motion to receive. Oh, wait, we have another hand. Councillor Hazlet-Thiel.
Thank you, Mayor Burton. I want to thank the staff for turning it around so quickly and for all the ease of understanding. But it strikes me, because everybody's sort of said everything that I was thinking as well, and my notes are voluminous. But it strikes me that this really is a wish list from a group of people that have an agenda. And I'm kind of curious about, maybe we should make our wish list about how they can help us do what we think is really important to support affordable housing and the right mix of housing and protect the environment. I mean, it really does read like their Christmas wish list, and there is so much for the average individual to absorb. I'm looking forward to to receive what will be, I guess, their report, and not a leaked report, and the workshops that we're going to have to debate how we address this in a thoughtful and comprehensive way.
Thank you for that, Councillor Hazlet-Thiel. As I published tonight in the newsletter for the Office of Mayor and Council, the mayors of the GTHA have done a census or a count, and we forwarded to the government at the summit that I mentioned on January 17th, that there have been at least 250,000 new housing units approved by 2019 or earlier that have not yet been built. And the task force has so far ignored that fact. And I will characterize all of the proposals, all 58 of them, as unable to do anything about making housing more affordable, because none of the savings that are alleged to occur are in any way recommended to be passed through to a buyer. And when an industry is sitting on an unused inventory of approvals of 250,000 units in a province the economists have told us is 100,000 units short and needs 30,000 more units a year to achieve price equilibrium, the task force has missed the target, unless its target was the profits and convenience of builders. But if the target was affordability, they have failed, in my humble opinion, to even touch the target. And we'll see what the task force in its wisdom produces and what the minister chooses to do with it. But I can tell you at the summit, they were all gung-ho. Councillor O'Meara, I thought I was having the last word, but I made a mistake.
No, Your Worship, it's not that. It's just you've got a question in my head that probably only you can answer is, what excuse is it that the development industry gives for not developing those 250,000 homes? I mean, because they can't just sit in here going, is it red tape? Is it development? Like, what is it when they talk to people and say, well, this is the reason why we can't? I can't imagine they just put their heads in the sand. What is it that they're saying is the reason why they can't?
Oh, they don't admit that they're doing it. And they use denial. And look, businesses don't like a jagged performance. Shareholders don't like a jagged performance. And supply management is a well-known, well-observed phenomenon in our economy. Everybody who can does it. And so you've got a stockpile of inventory. You put it out at the pace that you're comfortable with, that'll keep prices where you want them, in this case, growing. And meanwhile, you create a certain panic, and in our desperation to get affordable housing, we give up all of the protections that we've built up over the last 50 years. That's what's going on, in my humble opinion. So we're going to be left with no protections, next to no public participation, next to no heritage protection, next to no zoning, character of neighborhoods, forget it. And the promise of, in return for giving all this up, is we're going to have affordable housing, and we're going to be very surprised when you don't get that. You just give everything up and you don't get what you're giving it up for. Bad bargain in my view, but hopefully Oakville will rise to the challenge and help the government understand the bad path that's being laid in front of them. Councillor Giddings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Do I have a motion to receive? I had one from Councillor Grant. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Clerk. It's been so long, I forgot. Is there any objection to Councillor Grant's motion? Seeing none, Councillor Grant, congratulations, your motion's carried. Council, we need a mover for the Accessibility Advisory Committee minutes to be received. Councillor Lischina, thank you. Any objection? There being none, that carries. It would be in order to have a motion to rise and report. Councillor Duddick, thank you. Is any objection? That's carried, Madam Clerk. I rise and report the Committee of the Whole has met and has made recommendations on the consent items, the discussion items, and the advisory committee minutes as noted by the clerk. It would be in order to have a mover and seconder for the report. Councillor Knoll and Councillor Elgar, thank you very much. Any objection? There being none, the report is adopted. Council, your information items have been circulated electronically. You have your status of outstanding issues as well. And that brings us to new business. And we have a notice of motion, which has been introduced for the next council meeting. And this is on joint and several liability. It's recommended by the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. And you have it in the agenda. I would like to see if there's a mover and seconder for this so that we can schedule this for the next council meeting. Councillor O'Meara, thank you. And Councillor Duddick, thank you. Any objection? Madam Clerk, there being none, that carries. Now, we have a lot of new business under this section of our agenda. And the first is the proclamation for Black History Month, which begins tomorrow. And everyone is welcome at the Black History Month flag raising at Town Hall, up to a total of 25 under the new relaxed rules. And the proclamation is, whereas throughout its long history, Ontario has been characterized and strengthened by its diverse and distinctive cultures, and whereas from the time of its establishment, people of African and Caribbean descent have made significant contributions to the development and betterment of the province, and whereas the Black community continues to play a vital role within the social and cultural mosaic that is Ontario, and whereas Black History Month was first recognized in Ontario in February 1993, marking the 200th anniversary of the passage of legislation prohibiting the importation of slaves into Upper Canada, and whereas Black History Month continues to provide the opportunity to remember and celebrate the contribution that African and Caribbean Canadians have made to Ontario, I now therefore proclaim February 2022 as Black History Month in the town of Oakville. Thank you, everybody. I would also like to observe that January 29th marked the 5th anniversary of the Quebec City mosque shooting and the first National Day of Remembrance of the Quebec City mosque attack and action against Islamophobia. We stand in solidarity with our Muslim community. Our thoughts are with the victims and their loved ones. I would like to call for a moment of silence as we remember the 6 victims who lost their lives to a hateful act of terror on January 29th. Thank you, everyone. As we honor the victims, we must also remain vigilant against hate, against all citizens and residents, and also against Islamophobia. I invite you on council to share your remarks or comments on this occasion. Councillor Sandhu.
Thank you, Mayor Burton. Members of our community continue to mourn this tragic loss of life since this deadly mosque shooting and may still have a sense of anxiety 5 years after the Quebec City mosque attack. I, for one, can certainly empathize with how so many in our community may feel, having been a victim myself to hate and being called a terrorist more than once in my life, solely because of the way I look, the way my family looks, and the manner in which we choose to practice our religion. No member of any community should ever feel unsafe in Canada. As we remember the victims of this act of hatred, we should all continue to work towards an inclusive, diverse, and equitable community where everyone feels welcome and safe.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to take a moment to recognize the members of our local Muslim community, residents and local organizations that took time to recognize the National Day of Remembrance of the Quebec City mosque attack and action against Islamophobia over the weekend. The mosque shooting in Quebec City and the targeted and fatal attack against a Muslim family in London, Ontario last year are stark reminders that we must stand together against Islamophobia. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Palmer. All right, Council, we turn now to regional reports and question period regarding town boards and advisory committees. And as I promised last month, I have a brief regional report for the benefit of town or local council members who do not sit on the regional council. Decision day on adding land for development in Halton has been postponed by the region of Halton. The region will conduct a workshop meeting for council in place of the February 9th regional council meeting that was going to make a decision. No date for a decision meeting has been set by the region at this time. Regional council will meet as council a week later on February 16th. The agenda for February 16th council meeting will be available on halton.ca this Friday. We have been advised to expect the following at the February 16th council meeting and just before it. The Halton Community Housing Corporation will have 2 meetings in the early morning before the regional council convenes at 9:30 for a statutory public meeting concerning its update of the region's development charges bylaw. That process has been going on for most of a year and will culminate with the obligatory statutory meeting, after which at 10:30, the regional council will convene a regular meeting. It's my expectation that the region will need to adopt a decision complying with the Ontario Growth Plan by its March or at latest April meeting in order to comply with various statutory requirements about timing. I and others intend at the next regional council meeting to offer regional council a resolution directing changes to the proposed draft preferred growth concept. We'll see where we get with that. And that is my report on the region. I'm happy to take questions, and otherwise, I'll turn to, I'm not seeing any, Councillor Duddick.
Thank you, Worship. Just to encourage members of the public that meeting on February 8th is open to members of the public to watch and to listen to the discussions and the presentation from our staff in answering quite a few questions that have been posed, not only from our municipality, but the neighboring municipalities regarding the proposed preferred growth concept. So I'd encourage others to tune in and listen to the discussion that takes place.
Thank you. That's that's a good reminder, and I appreciate you doing that. The region has convened a workshop meeting, which under the Municipal Act allows the region to exclude delegations and does not allow it to exclude the public from watching and listening. I'm not aware of any requests for reports. However, if I'm moving too fast, I'll slow down and go back to Councillor Knoll and Councillor Luschina.
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to take a moment because I didn't have a chance to raise this at the last meeting, and just on behalf of the Halton Police Board, I want to convey our congratulations to Oakville native and I think grew up in what is now Ward 2, Chief Stephen Tanner, who celebrated 20 years as a police chief and 40 years as a police officer this past January 12th. 10 years of those in Halton. 10 years as chief in Halton. He started his career here. But most significant in that milestone is that he is now the longest serving chief of police in Canada. And we're very lucky to have him. He is a terrific contributor to keeping Halton Region the safest regional municipality in Canada. So congratulations to the chief.
Thank you very much, Mr. Police Board Chair. And let me take this opportunity to congratulate you on your election just a few days ago as chair for the next year. Councillor Longo and then Councillor O'Meara.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to put this under a potentially congratulatory, but as everyone should be aware, the Beijing Winter Olympics starts this Friday, February 4th. And so I think I'd like to wish the best of luck to all the Canadian athletes, but a special shout out to the Oakville athletes. So if you bear with me, I'd like to kind of list them and what they're actually participating in. So to begin with, women's figure skating and women's singles is Madeline Skeesis, and a special shout out to her coach, because Nancy Lemaire. I actually work with her husband, Mark Lemaire. And then her other coach, Derek Schmidt. So that's in figure skating. Women's hockey, there's Brianne Jenner, who will be representing Oakville in hockey. And we know we have a strong hockey team. Snowboarding in the parallel giant slalom, sounds very scary, but Kaylee Buck will be participating. And then the last one, which I look forward to seeing, is actually the freestyle skiing slope style big air. I have no idea what that's going to look like, but Evan McEachran is participating in that event. So I want to wish all of them very good luck, all the athletes, but a special shout out to the Oakville athletes. We're very proud of them representing us. and go Canada, go.
Thank you very much, Councillor Longo. A little bit of civic pride is always good. Councillor O'Meara and then Councillor Lischina.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. And just to jump off of that a little bit, Brian Jenner was one of my teachers growing up, and I was happy to have babysat Brianne at a couple of times when I was a younger man when he need be. But nevertheless, it is also Black History Month in February 1st, and I would like to remind everyone of that. Tomorrow there will be a flag raising at town. At City Hall and Town Hall, and if you can be there, Wednesday evening at 7:00 p.m. there is a virtual Imagining Futures event happening from 7 to 8:30. So please Google CCAH, Canadian Caribbean Association of Halton, to be a part of that. Now more than ever, it's important to make our voices heard and let us know that. Let everybody know that everybody in our community is supported and we have their back. So just to let everyone know to remember that and to stop and take a moment to think about what that means in our community here. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you very much, Councillor O'Meara. Councillor Lischina and then Councillor Dudek.
Thank you, Your Worship. Tomorrow is also a very special day for our Chinese community. It's the Chinese New Year, the year of the water tiger. I know that yourself and Councillor Adams and I have joined the Seniors 99 in their big Zoom production just a couple of days ago. So that was great to see. So I wish everyone who's celebrating the Chinese New Year a safe, healthy, and prosperous New Year. 新年快乐.
Very impressed with your facility with the language. Councillor Dudek.
Hard time topping that, but building on what you mentioned at the onset of remarks regarding the Black History Month, Oakville has played a very prominent role in the Underground Railroad. And for those of you who may not know, there was a house at 104 Burnett Street that was the location of many people for safe haven for the Underground Railroad. And last year, I believe it was, we erected a plaque in memorial for that event. Councillor Lischina joined both Councillor Chisholm and myself, and various of the members, rather, of the families that are descendants of that Underground Railroad. Very moving, and I encourage you to read the plaque that's affixed there.
Thank you, Councillor Dudek. All right, thank you, everybody. It would be in order now for a mover and seconder for consideration and reading of the bylaws. Councillor O'Meara and Councillor Robertson, thank you. Is there any objection? Madam Clerk, there being no objection, the bylaws are considered and read as listed in the agenda. Council, thank you. It's been terrific working with you. And that ends the work of this meeting. And we'll see you next time. Good night.